Chapter 11. Friday morning, and the quiet of the homestead was broken by Crawford yelling at someone. When Zack came out, he found his father prowling around the lounge in his pajamas, shouting on his phone. "Why can't they come out here?" A pause, and then his prowling increased. "Then tell them to take another flight. I'm not—" An interruption stopped Crawford and had him looking at the ceiling instead. "Did you see the news last night?" he demanded. A short reply. "Then you'll know that this city is crawling with people who want to skin my brother alive. If someone recognizes me, I could be physically attacked, and my cover will be blown. For sure." A much longer reply this time. Crawford's first response was to shake his head, but by the time the other person had finished, his head was hanging and he was staring at the floor. "All right," he said. "I'll do it, but it better be worth it." A short time later, the conversation was over. Crawford disconnected, slammed the phone on the table, and swore loudly. "What's up?" asked Zack. "Stanley," said Crawford, as if it were another rude word. "Because of your uncle, the IRD is now putting our firm through the ringer. I have to meet with some of the executive to work out a strategy." Zack knew the IRD was the government tax department. "Does that mean you're in financial trouble too?" "No, we're good. It's just that with the IRD, you have to cross all your I's dotted and T's crossed." "So what do you have to do?" "I have to be at Wellington Airport by 9. We're meeting in a room there. It'll take most of the day." He turned to Zack. "You'll be right by yourself?" "Jess is coming over," Zack said, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. "We're riding to Zealandia." "That's good," said Crawford, moving to turn on the radio. "That's good." He tuned in to Dub FM. "I'd better hear what these two idiots have to say about yesterday's protest." But the two idiots weren't saying anything. Music was playing. Crawford moved off to the bedroom to get dressed while Zack organized some breakfast. By the time Zack was sitting down with his cereal, Keith and Sally were back on. Sally: "I see your old mate, Brian Dixon's up to his usual tricks again." Keith: "Oh, what is it this time? Has he seen another moa?" Sally: "Not a moa, a leopard." Zack had the spoon halfway to his open mouth. It never got there. Instead, it fell back into the bowl as his mouth gaped wider. Keith: "A what?" Sally: "A leopard, you know. A huge cat with spots, the sort that eats people." Keith: "Where did he see this?" Sally: "Somewhere on the southwest coast. Won't say exactly. Sent an email referring us to his Facebook page, where there's a photo." Keith, chuckling: "Is it any clearer than that moa photo a couple of years back?" Sally: "Marginally. There is a whitish shape that could be an animal, but what sort is not clear. To me, it looks more like a pig than a big cat." Keith: "And he expects us to believe it's a leopard?" Sally: "This time he says he's going to get proof. He's not going to be laughed at again. He'll get something that people will have to believe. So I guess we can expect more from Brian Dixon in the near future." Keith: "Oh, there'll be more for sure. If not from Brian, then from the crazies who'll believe him. Bet you we'll have leopard sightings from all over Wellington before the weekend's over." Sally: "Talking about sightings, here's one for real. A pod of orca was filmed yesterday swimming just off Oriental Parade. A woman training for next month's triathlon." Zack tuned out. On any other day, orca would have been interesting, but not today. Not after he'd just heard of Brian's announcement that he would prove a leopard was running loose on Wellington's southwest coast. From what Zack had heard the previous day, Brian's idea of proof would be a dead animal. While he might not produce a dead leopard, Zack felt certain that a dead serval would be just as interesting to Brian Dixon's Facebook friends and disbelieving radio hosts. By the time Jess arrived, Zack had worked himself into a state. He'd researched Brian Dixon on the internet and wasn't happy with what he found. Brian had a point to prove. 2 years earlier, he had claimed to see a moa while pig hunting near East Cape. There was a photo showing a shape that could be a moa, but then it could equally be something else, maybe just a shadow. Only a handful of people had believed him. The rest were scathing on their attacks. He'd been called all sorts of names, none of them pleasant. In the end, he'd stopped talking about it. Until now. On his Facebook page, Brian vowed that soon people would have to believe him. There was a big cat roaming the hills out of Wellington, a leopard that he would kill and bring home. "Ya all gotta have to eat ya filthy insults," he wrote. "And so yous don't choke, I'll send you some leopard steak to help them go down." Zach told Jess all about this as they walked across the paddocks toward Wairiki Stream. As planned, she had a dog lead and a blanket in her backpack. Zach's contribution was a silver bowl and a piece of steak he'd stolen from the freezer. Yesterday, when they'd made the plans, he'd felt confident in shifting Tasha to a safer, more comfortable home. With what they now knew, both were beginning to have doubts. "I hate pig hunters," said Jess, climbing down to the stream. "How can he even think of killing such a gorgeous animal?" "Hunters have always killed big cats," shrugged Zach. "Maybe if he gets close to her, he'll see how beautiful she is," said Jess, hopefully. Zach shook his head. "That won't stop him. He won't back down now." Jess looked up that valley. "What if he's already up there?" "Well, we'll find out," said Zach. "We'll check where they parked their vehicle yesterday." "What time did you see them?" "Early." Jess looked at her watch. 10 o'clock, she said. "What time did they get back?" "About 11. So if they've come back this morning, then they'd still be up there." "Maybe," said Zach. The vehicle wasn't there, but it had been. Fresh tire tracks showed that the same vehicle had parked in the same place. There was also another set of footprints. Brian and Sean had come and gone. For Jess and Zach, that was worse than if the hunters were still up the valley. To have been and then left again so quickly suggested that their business hadn't taken all that long. Jess checked around for any signs of blood while Zach looked for Serval paw prints. They found neither, nor anything else that indicated Tasha had been there, dead or alive. However, that didn't dispel their fears, and they left the area feeling more miserable and worried than when they arrived. The journey up the stream was mostly in silence, although that didn't mean that they weren't thinking about Tasha. Zach was working through the events of the last few days, wondering if he could have done things differently. What would have happened if yesterday they had told Crawford and Jenny about Tasha? Perhaps they could have called her back so the adults could see her. Would that have made any difference? He felt as if he'd messed up right from the start, right from the moment when he picked up the silver bowl and hidden it. When they reached the branch to Breakneck Creek, Jess suggested that they stop and try calling with a roldie. She'd charged the batteries fully overnight, and when she turned it on, the sound blasted up and down the valleys. "She can hardly miss that," said Zach. "That's if she's here or there," replied Jess. There seemed nothing else worth saying. After 3 minutes, Jess turned off the machine and they continued up Breakneck Creek. Twice more they stopped, with no more success than before. The going was tougher than on Thursday. There had been showers overnight, making the creek deeper and swifter. Drops rained down off the bushes the moment they were touched. By the time Jess and Zach got to the gorge, they were wet through and cold. "We can't get through there," said Jess, staring at the water gushing between the rocks. "We'll have to go around," said Zach. "What's the point, Zach?" Zach thought for a while. She was right. There seemed no point in going on. If Tasha was still there, she must have already heard the roldie. It was time to give up. "One more try," he said, "and then we'll go back." By then the sun was high enough to shine into hidden parts of the valley. They sat on a boulder enjoying the autumn heat, hoping it might dry them out a little. Jess turned on the roldie and they waited. The minutes passed. 5, 10, 15, and yet there was no sign of Tasha. Yet neither was prepared to suggest turning off the machine. Both knew that this would be the final act. In the end, it was Jess who faced up to reality. "Let's go," she said. "This is too sad, sitting here and thinking." Her voice sounded as if she was crying. Zach was never able to explain why he answered the way he did. "No," he said, "it's too soon to give up on her. Turn off the Roldy and see what happens." It took a while for his ears to adjust after the noise of the machine. First came the sounds of the water, and then the birds singing and chirping and twittering. The chirping was particularly loud, as if it was nearby. Zach scanned around trying to identify the source. It seemed to be coming from above, on the rocks that formed the gorge. His eyes moved up, and there she was, standing in the sunshine, looking down, calling to them. Slowly, he reached around to the backpack and pulled out his camera. Tasha, as if sensing what he was about to do, raised her head to gaze further down the valley, a queen surveying her kingdom. Zach pressed the button, knowing that this would be the best photo ever.